All right, we're ready to get started for teaching my class last week.
The church.
Was it the church? Anytime I say, what'd you study? God. Yeah. All right, 1 Corinthians chapter 5. Remember, as we've gone through, I'm saying I'm of Cephas, or some were saying following different teachers. And what does Paul say in response to that? He says, there's only one person who died on the cross for you. There's only one person. Paul wasn't crucified. Cephas, we all speak the same thing. Wisdom in the church, you have the witness of God. 2 is about unity in the church. Chapter 4, pretty much Paul says there in chapter 3. The gospel. I'm not coming with great. We're to be unified in the gospel. Now, we get to chapter 5, and guess what chapter 5 is? And there's times when there must be, that he goes in and says, now there are times you need to be. I'm reading from the New King James Version. It's actually reported that there is sexual immorality who has his father's wife from among you. For I indeed, as absent in such a one to Satan for the destruction of the removed of somebody else. They were telling me about it. I'm lucky no first cousins usually. The way it's said, it looks like a step highly immoral. It was on Corinth we're saying that's bad. Now the problem with that, no, this is a port city to be sexually immoral, right? And so that's what's this thing where they're allowing sexual immorality. Now, what chapters is something that sometimes, now I'm not against intellectualism, but there's sometimes when people forget about the basics of life. You can talk to them about something and they have to see they're immoral. Now, when we outsmart ourselves, we get degrees, several master's degrees, and all that. Gospel complicated. For 4 syllables. But you could be an old country boy. Sit. Now, sometimes the parables, but the gospel is simple. You change your life to follow, and you live to God, and you're obedient to His word. When you get deep intellectually, make sure they haven't lost that foundation, putting Him first in those things which you do. You see, I belong to Apollos. This guy's intellectual. I belong to Peter. He's the apostle of the Jews. I belong to Paul. He's the apostle of the Gentiles. They got caught up with all these about somebody being lost. What I wrote here. Pentheo, you're sitting there in the room and not really realizing yet that Jesus had. Here's a question. It's personal. Loss of a person spiritually. Do we still get heartbroken about spirituality too, don't we? Absolutely. Sometimes it's our children and our spouses. Just look around. And it's like Jesus, looking upon the people and seeing that they're like sheep without a shepherd. All these people needs to be broken. And religion and in their spiritual theories that they had forgotten that hunger for lost souls. Danger can happen in the church today. Knowledge, be sorrowful for the lack of morality in our midst. Okay? Church discipline upon a sinning Christian. And so he wanted them to discipline this church nowadays. Okay? What are the reasons for church discipline? Huh? Okay. Our goal, when a person is in outright sin, say one of our midst, okay? Somebody who's a Christian should know better. Immoral relationship with their father's wife. Something which is just, even in Benton, people are saying, man, that's crazy, Church. Okay, Matthew 18, and say, listen, this is what the Bible teaches. I love you. I don't want you to lose your soul. Okay, following Matthew 18, if that doesn't, somebody who's their mentor, go to them in the same way. If they still won't return, then the church needs to act, is to win this person back to God. Okay? You're not that you're better than anybody else. Your number one goal is to save a soul. Cool again. Preachers aren't supposed to be cool. Okay? What's neat about this is you read 2 Corinthians, what's happened? Recognize that he did wrong, he's repented, and he's come back to take care of him because he's a precious soul. So this discipline area, so that's problem number one. That's what we're after, first and foremost, okay? There's a second reason for church discipline. And that second reason we'll get on to a little bit here later. Okay? And what's that talking about? Okay, we're hanging out. Say you're at maybe, okay? You're out there, and people know you, and they know where it ends. Judge the bent. We're more than a big building. That's what we are, 3091 Main Street. That's what we are. Okay? We're more than this green roof. And so your friends judge this congregation by you. And so if the only person they know that goes in here is probably a lot like me, which may be a scary thought, okay? Judge the Benton Church of Christ by you, okay? So, here, when there's a person in our midst who is living in public sin of the church. Yeah, it's church full of hypocrites. I see that person, I know what they're doing. What influence would the church have? Wouldn't have a positive influence at all. And so that's a secondary reason for discipline, is to make it known that person doesn't represent what we are. That person does not represent us. Does that make sense? Because a lot of people look at that and they think, well, that's not what church is about. Church is about forgiveness. Church is about grace. Church is about second chances. And that's absolutely true, right? But there's times where we have to separate, because the church, that we've got to make sure that the church has a good reputation in the community. Okay, now Paul talks about this discipline, and he says, I want this person to be disciplined. You have my authority. Okay, he may die to this world or be sick to this world so that he will be healed. You read in different commentaries, some people think that that's actually a physical ailment that will happen to somebody. And you're looking back over to Acts 13, remember with Elymas, or Sergius Paulus, the man who spoke against him was made blind for a certain time. Maybe that's what this is talking about. We don't know. Obviously today, in our context, that's not exactly what's happened. But when a person sees that he's turned away from God, perhaps that person will be brought forth and his soul will be made whole. Okay, any comment? A lot of talking right there, didn't I? Chapter 5, verses 6 through 8. Chapter 5, verses 6 through 8 of 1 Corinthians 15. Okay. He says, your glorying is not good. Do you not know that a little leaven leavens the whole lump? Therefore purge out the old leaven, that you may be a new lump, since you truly are unleavened for us. Therefore let us keep the feast, both the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. Okay. Braided together, don't we? Which is not much of a modern analogy today. A lot of people in this room will remember their mama's working on it, or maybe working on it a few years back. And that's the idea of leaven. How many people have ever worked very much? Okay. All right. See, that's before my time. I'm a Walmart kid. She made my bread for me. Okay. All right. Leaven. Leaven is alive. Okay, it's a living thing, which is really freaky to me. All right. But you put the living thing into the dough, and it's doing whatever things yeast does it to rise. And so depending on the kind of bread, depends a little bit on what the reaction will be, which is there. It makes the bread much more fluffy, much more nutritious, and more of like what we like, right? Okay, so Paul's using that analogy, okay? You put how much leaven into a loaf? Okay, a small bit. Especially when you're looking at old recipes, you put a very little bit into it, and it makes a huge difference, right? I remember every once in a while, I love making apple pies. That's something I really enjoy doing. And what is it you put in apple pie? It's not nutmeg. What is it? Not cinnamon. It's oh, it was something else. Huh? Huh?
My teeth.
You put your teeth in the apple pie? That's probably what it was. I forgot what the spice is, but you're supposed to just put a little bit into it. I don't remember what it is. Kyla would know. And I remember one time I couldn't find it anywhere in the store where it came in little bits, and it came in a big chunk, and I thought, well, that'll work. Cut it up. Woo! Your teeth would fall out whenever you had it. Whoa! It's one of those things you bring to a church dinner, and you get to bring it home, Well, so that's the first analogy we're using here, okay? Analogy number one, 100 and, what's that say? 40. Okay, that's a bunch of folks. We beat our little number up there, okay? Great stuff. All right, so you've got 349 people, okay? As far as the reputation in this community, how many people, okay? All right, it was a long time ago. Domestic dispute, okay? A sad thing. The whole court trial, went to jail, all those things, okay? That was well before my time. I mean, we're talking 15, 20 years before my time. People loved both people, And you had some people say, well, you know, man, I loved her, and I hate that happened. And some people said, I liked him. And, you know, you went back and forth, okay? 15 or 20 where I'd preach, you know what they would say? So-and-so killed somebody. And, you know, the way they'd talk about it, I guess that did happen. And, you know, one of the things I'd bring up is, you know. But just that one thing that happened among a church, stained a church, I bet you go down there nowadays and talk about that church and send people in the community, and that's the one thing they think of, okay? A little bit of leaven, the action of one person, although it's a huge action, affected that church through the years, even decades. Now, nothing like that here, absolutely, okay? Nothing like that here. But the action of one person makes a huge difference, okay? I hope it's not always negative. Yeah.
It seems that leaven always has a connotation of being negative. And one person can fire up a lot of other people and it catch on, you know.
Right. Yeah. What Ed's talking about, he says, you know, leaven usually has a negative connotation. And I'm trying to think, I think somewhere in 2 Corinthians, leaven actually has a positive. I think leaven is mentioned like 9 or 10 times is. But you're right. And we usually think of influence as a negative, but it can be a positive as well.
People would come to me and I support for their complaint.
Yeah.
And talk to them. No, they wouldn't listen. Go to the elder. If we'll do that, we can nip that in the bud. What they did is ignore me. But anyhow, we need to help nip those things in the bud.
Yeah. When a problem comes up in the
the
church, you take care of it early. Yeah.
And that's the first procedure. You're supposed
To be fixed early. Okay. All right.
I think Orpheus Hayward is positive living.
Huh?
I think Orpheus Hayward is positive living.
Absolutely.
I think that dude will fire people.
I think so too. I'm excited about him coming. All right, we covered this in a lot of different areas. First of all, nip it in the bud, as the great philosopher Barney would say, right? Remember Mayberry? Nip it in the bud. All right. Okay. Men and women, they get sick about the same, okay? Women get sick more, and they go to the doctor a bunch, right? But do women live longer than men? Usually, yeah. You know, we're talking stereotypically. They live a lot longer, but they go to the doctor, get sick, live a lot longer. Sick? It's a humdinger, right? Why? Why does that tend to happen? They're sissies. I don't know if that's a wording I was looking for. Huh? My wife, over this last week, she's like, oh.
One time he said when he was serving his apprenticeship,
Yeah.
a woman come out every week. He said that old doctor told her one day, said, you've got appendix, it's about to rupture.
Yeah.
Said he operated on her. He said, Doc, what'd you do that for? He said, she's having a meeting over here every week. Now women's talking about their surgery. She ain't got nothing to talk about.
Just got to fit right in.
And he said after that, he did that.
She was better, huh? Oh, okay. But a lot of times men won't look at symptoms which are happening. And they allow, maybe it's cancer, maybe it's a heart issue, whatever it may be, to get to the point where when they finally go to the doctor, if it's not too late, there's some major things that have to happen. With health care, it's important to go early and get that taken care of. All right, that's an analogy for church, okay? When you deal with things early, sometimes it's uncomfortable, but you only have a problem between maybe like 2 people, 3 people, something like that. But when you allow it to fester, then you run into big trouble. Saying, usually in the Bible, leaven is looked at in a negative way. It also works in a positive way, right? What did Jesus say? We are the light of the earth and the salt of the earth. Agent in that way. It's not specifically leaven, but working as that leavening agent. A little salt goes a long ways, right? Things like what is used in the first century. Salt saves the world, is what Jesus is saying, and we can't lose our saltiness. Our congregation, we've got a lot of people who've been on city council. We've got a lot of people in prominence, a lot of teachers, got a lot of coaches. That's always been an excellent reflection upon this congregation. A lot of people have seen these coaches, have seen these community leaders, and it's made the church have a very positive image in this community. And that's one of the reasons why we've been able to accomplish some of the things which we've been able to accomplish is because of the influence, the leavening of those people. Recognize the difference one person can make. Studying the book of Nehemiah. Now, I love preachers, okay? As you know what's neat about Nehemiah? Was he a preacher? No, he was a taste tester. And he used his position of not being. Now, he brought along Ezra, and Ezra involvement, community work, good at. The church needs good preachers. Absolutely we do. But the church doesn't need to be all preachers. We need good community beings. All right, now the Passover deal, okay? You know why Easter moves back and forth? Have you ever calendar of that day, the Jewish calendar? Look at the solar calendar. They're moving. And Easter is always the Jewish. Easter is the Sunday after that. Beautiful study of church history, calendar works and stuff. To really boring stuff that is written in Italian to begin with. You know, huge cathedrals take 100 years to build on the east in every building. And that's what their goal is. Back in that day, they working off lunar calendar causes some problems with calculus each year. And so they would get the cathedral, Easter would come, and that's what I would do. Some people have to go through calculus a lot and work through calculus. Passover, back to Passover. Yeah, the idea of leaven.
We can be a new lump. We've talked about two things that it affects. If we're commanded to withdraw, it affect our worship.
Okay, and what he's saying is, does it affect our worship service by, like, are you saying that we shouldn't have them in church with us?
I'm saying it's that they're old leaven, and it says to purge out the old leaven.
Okay, all right. Okay, let me get right back to that real quick. Let me talk about Corinthians. Passover. Came over. If you had blood, if you didn't put blood in your doorpost, if you weren't covered by the blood, the death of the most precious thing, the firstborn. Okay, you know, we today can. All right. Now, when they did the Passover, one of the things that God told them was, He is going to want you out. Now, getting ready for your journey, you're going to eat the sheep. You're also going to prepare unleavened bread. We take on a journey. It won't mold. At the idea of the Passover, everything cooked in that way. And, you know, we go through that very simply and say, okay, all these unleavened bread and fruit of the vine. Maybe say Jesus is our Passover lamb, and things such as that. You have unleavened bread and not have that leaven there. Our worship is soil who aren't living the way they should. So that's like what you were saying, right? We got a few minutes. And who is not, right? Now, maybe if you've been a part of a denomination or talked to a denominationalist, they'll talk about, okay, open communion. Hey, listen, anybody can come in and worship a single person, okay? Bishop or priest will look more worthy of taking of the sacrament. And so they'll determine who gets to and who doesn't get to worship, okay? Now, are we open or closed communion? We don't teach that everybody worships because, man, that would be scary if that judge was yourself to see if you're worthy. Examine yourself. Now, but that's a total other thing I'm talking about is, hey, you ever have back problems? Sit in that pew. Say, brother so-and-so, and we pretend that nothing is happening, maybe because he gives a lot of money or maybe because he's prominent, and it soils our worship one another. Not just because about that person's soul, but of the Lord's church. Is that about right?
Well, and that's true, but that's between me and God. Those things
right.
Seem like adulterous marriages.
And that's where you have to deal with it. You're right. Is this man that's living in an open sexual immoral relationship? Make sure the church is pure. Reputation of the church goes. So I agree with you on that one. I think so. Yes, ma'am. Okay. What she says is first and foremost, and then she says you need to follow you need to bring somebody with you, then you need to bring it before the church. Okay, thing to do. Now remember, the reason this judgment's going is not because I feel I'm better than whoever, okay? Because far too often, that's not what we're after. They need to be saved. To just leave in a comfortable situation, to practice discipline and show. First and foremost, we wait too long. In 6 months, does it do us a lot of good to tell that person you're not allowed at church anymore? What are they going to say? If a church doesn't exhibit love, way doesn't matter either, okay? It'd be like going to my kids and saying, hey, because you acted this way, you're not allowed to eat vegetables. Yeah, they'd be like, okay.
If you get in that situation,
Got to recognize that importance of faith. That's her Bible class spot. This is her worship spot. And so that's important for us to recognize. Let's go ahead. We'll close up there. We'll finish there. Thank you for the time we had together. See you later.